Today is Yud Ches Elul, which is the yard site of the Maral, Prague. We're learning Takanas Hashavin, Siman Gimel, and he goes through the different descriptions or memras in the Gemara and Yuma, which explain, all start with Gedola Teshuva. Gedola Teshuva, that it goes up to the Kisei HaKavod, Gedola Teshuva, Shemei V'Refuah Lo'elam, and we've been concentrating on Siman Gimel of the Takanas Hashavin, Gedola Teshuva Shedocha Lo Sasei Shebetorah. Gedola Teshuva Shedocha Lo Sasei Shebetorah. I described this last week as it's an illegal type of a tshuva. Docha Lo Sasei Shebetorah is it's not within the rules of the Torah, which on its face is very simple to sort of understand. You did something wrong. What does Docha Lo Sasei Shebetorah even mean? How can tshuva even help? Somebody killed somebody. They killed somebody. The damage is done. Teshuva apparently doesn't have any limits, even though it says there's 24 things which are moneas hatshuva. All the Rishonim say, Eino monea lagamri, can't be that you completely nimna from tshuva. Everybody could do tshuva. A lot of times it says, Ein maspikin biyadai, lasas tshuva, means it's a prediction of Chazal, probably won't do tshuva. Ein maspikin biyadai, won't get around to doing tshuva, but that you can't do tshuva, everybody can do tshuva. And Gedola Teshuva, Shedocha Lo Sasei Shebetorah means that even if you can't, you can. That's what the words mean. In other words, even though there's no logic to it, so you still can do it. And Reb Tzadok explained, we talked about this last week, I just want to bring you up to date, and brings a number of examples. Last week we spoke about the Ma'aseh Merkava and what Yecheskel saw. No, that was enough for me one week. I don't want to go through that again, but I do want to say something about it. But the idea is that your basic, what the Mekubalim told us, that the basic structure of the world is that there are 7 spheros, meaning, this is how Reb Tzadok explains it, everything in this world that's here, everything you see, the table, you, me, that comes from Hashem and ends up in this world, goes through a process of 7 spheres: Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus. Everything goes through this process, but then that was where the Lo Sasei Shebetorah would lie within the process. That's where the Taryag mitzvahs are within the process. This is how we run the world. This is how we act in the world. But then there's getting above that whole world, and getting above that whole world, which might be difficult to do, but it's not so difficult to explain. Meaning, like, you don't have to belong to the rules of this world necessarily. And the Pshat and Teshuva, which we will further explain, it's a way. This is so important because there's 2 kinds of tshuva. They're both valid. One kind of tshuva is, okay, I was Machal Shabbos, Chas v'Shalom, or I spoke Lashon Hara, Chas v'Shalom. So it's like sort of a spreadsheet. You got to take care of it. And that's true. That's called, in the Svarim, Shari Tshuva calls it even tshuva tata. But the tshuva ilah is a different thing of tshuva, which I believe is 2 different psukim, which is a complete change, a complete different level. And it's not about the checklist. You got to do the checklist too, al chet, etc. You have to do that too, but you can't miss the tshuva ilah. So I saw something. I just wanted to share it because we were talking about the Ma'aseh Merkava. Last week, Reb Tzadok has a sefer, not the sefer, it's a sefer called Sefer HaZichronos, which is Kishmai Kenhu, things that were, that like he just wrote down, it's almost random, the order there. Sefer HaZichronos. And in there he asked the question, which is kind of a funny question. He says, nobody really understands the Ma'aseh Merkava. Not only that, but Chazal discouraged learning the Ma'aser Merkava. A couple of people we know knew the way. Rabbi Yeshua, the Gemara tells the story, knew about the Ma'aser Merkava. Whatever they got, they got. It's a nevuah of Yecheskel, which by and large we don't understand. If you open up the art scroll Yecheskel, he stops translating by the Ma'aser Merkava. It's like a warning, warning sign. This is not something that you should. It's most translations don't do that, but that's what they do. Chaim, why don't you get out of the sun? Okay. So Reb Tzadok asks like sort of an interesting basic question. He says, if nobody understands it, what's it doing there? Why would there be a whole section of Tanakh? And it really is a whole section of Tanakh, an important nevuah, the opening nevuah of Sefer Yecheskel. This is the real nevuah for the Golus, but don't go there. Nobody understands it. What is it for? And he answers that just because you don't understand something, it doesn't mean you can't experience it. I just want that to sink in for a minute, because this is probably one of the most important things that I have to say, not just today, but in life. That just because you don't understand something, it doesn't mean that you can't experience it. Now, experience takes in a lot of different senses. And, like in general, there's an important avoda to, not just use your das as you go through life. You should do that too. So many people don't use their das at all. But to just experience moments as we go through it. It's a whole gather of avodas Hashem, in my opinion. What that is, just give me a few minutes, okay? What that is being able to go lemala min hasheva sfiros. I mean, Edochanami, it's not something you can understand, but it is something. Everything is something. So, for instance, sometimes, people say, so many things go on in the news, and so people say, how could such a thing, happen? People, Chashuva Jews, getting killed in a terrorist attack, random, on their way to Kollel. How could such a thing be? The best answer, in my opinion, was given by Rav Moshe Sternbach yesterday, where he said, I have no idea. That's the correct answer. And any other answer is just maybe in 200 years, 300 years, there'll be somebody who'll say, for those families, who knows, but we have Emunah. What does that mean? It sounds so what do we need Rav Moshe Sternbach to say he doesn't understand? We can do that all by ourselves. And the answer is that I believe that it's the same as the Ma'aser Merkava. You don't necessarily have to understand everything. The avodas Hashem, avodas Ha'adam in this world is actually to get lemala min hadas, and that's where Teshuvah hides. Teshuvah ilah, as it's called, Teshuvah hides in a place which is beyond my do's and don'ts, and beyond my beyond any checklist that I have, or all those things are important. But the Teshuvah ilah, a different idea, different pasuk, is to get to a place somehow or another which is lamala from all that, and that's the Gedol Teshuvah shedocha lo saseh shibatar. That's the correct way to understand, I believe, this kind of. When sometimes the Gemara talks about Teshuvah, it doesn't talk about the individuals. Teshuvah talks about the Teshuvah of the whole Knesset Yisrael has to do Teshuvah. Okay, that would mean we all did the same Avera. So there's a lot of things you can say that we're all connected, and if I did an Avera, then somebody else has to suffer. But Teshuvah is okay. There's consequences, but Teshuvah. I mean, how can I do Teshuvah for you? But the answer is that when you get above all of this stuff that makes up this world, there is no individual people. It's one neshama. Our perception of the world is the Alma de Piruta, where this is one book, and this is another book, and this is a table, and this is a chair, this is Israel, this is America. But that's the way it is in this world. That's the way Hashem created this world, Alma de Piruta, that's emes. But that's all in the spheros. There is a place where you can, where it's even possible. There's a place where there's complete unity. Echad, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. There's a place where there's only one neshama. And that's the place of, maybe experience is too small of a word. That's the only word I know right now. But maybe experiencing instead of knowing it is still not enough. But in the Mekubalim call it hishtavus. So this idea of, by the way, like one doesn't have to be in this kind of a state all day, every day. In fact, it's supposed to live here in this world. But there has to be some kind of, and I'm speaking on not a level that I am, a level that I want to get and I want everyone to strive for. And that is, there has to be a moment at least where we can say, and this is the big example, Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Samid, the first Halacha in Shulchan Aruch is Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Samid. We have to picture Hashem, but you can't picture Hashem. So, Halacha Beis, you can't picture Hashem. So what's the Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Samid? What are we even doing there? Once you try to imagine some kind of an image or something of Hashem is Elois HaElois, he's the mystery of mysteries. Nobody could picture Hashem. Even the Nevi'im couldn't picture Hashem. But you can experience Hashem. And Shivisi Hishtavus, yes? Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Samid doesn't mean you understand. And it doesn't mean that it's here or here. It's a different thing. And that's apparently the Halacha Aleph. This is not for advanced daveners. This is Halacha Aleph. This is what has to be. This is kind of like experience, and it can be for a second. For a moment, if you get it the whole time. Chazal tell us that there were Chachamim that spent hours and hours on Shalifnei Tefillah, Shah B'Tefillah, Shah Acher. This is what they were doing. This is what they were doing. They weren't learning Rabbi Akiva Eiger's. What they were doing was getting to a point of getting to a point which is above das.
So when Reb Tzadok is saying that in the context of the Makabah and Cheskel, is he taking that as a limud for life, or are we saying by read the words of the Cheskel?
You read it, everybody understands the words. That's not hard. Don't use the art scroll. But everybody understands the words. What we don't understand is like the concepts and the contradictions in the concepts, because the size, the shape, description of the Shekhinah. But everybody can feel, and everybody must learn it. Everybody must learn it and feel it. It's part of the Torah, part of Tanakh, and part of so many parts of Chazal, and from Midrashim and Sefer HaZohar, and even from Gemara. I'll tell you what happens when you speak to a young person, a very, very smart person, ask them for advice. They give you good advice. It's from here. When you speak to a Zaken Shekana Chachma, what you're seeing is something different completely. And that's why you walk away from that that you had an experience. If you're zocha to meet a Zaken Shekana Chachma, whatever political term you want to give for that, but when it's not an easy sort of like you don't get like a diploma saying Zaken Shekana Chachma, but when you know it when you meet it, because what happens there, a Zaken Shekana Chachma, you're talking somebody who's advising you from a different place, not from a Kabbalistic place. That's but I'm not talking about skulas and mishagas. I'm saying somebody who sort of gets it on a different level. So,
So when we're learning the words, that's what he's saying, we can still experience something beyond that.
of course, that's exactly what I said. Yes, that's what I said. That's what Reb Tzadok says. The experience everybody could have. Reb Tzadok in Siman Gimel gave a number of examples, and I'm going very slow because everyone is so important, but it's what we learned from this, which is we want to do. But he gave an example of Torah, gave an example of Menashe. We talked a lot about Menashe. Menashe was a killer. Menashe was a horrible, horrible king of Israel, the worst. And at the end, he wanted to do Teshuvah. The Gemara says in the Malachim, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, the Malachim said, there's no way this guy could do Teshuvah. Enough is enough. And Hashem said, you made a special passage for him, a special tunnel for him, Machteres, Chotar, Kimin Machteres, Tachas Kisei HaKavod. We all know what tunnels are. But why didn't Hashem just push the Malachim away? So the answer is that the Malachim are right. He can't do Teshuvah in the regular. This needs something different. This needs Hashem himself to get up to the Teshuvah. And then last week we spoke about Yecheskel and the Merkava and the Yad. But I'm here, I want to talk about something which everybody knows about, very famous, everybody likes talking about it, including me. And that's Elisha ben Avuya Acher. But I'll tell you the story briefly. Everybody knows the story, but it's the insight to the story that I want to share here. But Reb Tzadok, to quote Reb Tzadok, Ubazeh, this is the Nakuda, this is the point. Ubazeh ta'a Acher. This was Acher's mistake. Kishashama oisai baskol, when he heard Yener baskol, that baskol. And what did the baskol say? Kulam shuvu vanim shoivavim, kulam l'tshuva chutz me'acher. And he heard this baskol. Now, I don't hear baskols. Elisha ben Avuya heard a baskol. Elisha ben Avuya, by the way, was a serious Tana. Possibly one of the four Gedolei Adar. Like important to, it wasn't like he was and like the biggest proof to that is that that when Rabbi Akiva, which I'm going to learn with you in a minute, when Rabbi Akiva chose three Gedolim to Nichnas Lepardes, which I'll try to explain briefly. He chose Ben Azai ben Zoma and Elisha ben Avuya. So there were a lot of Tanoim around in the time of Rabbi Akiva. A lot of big people, a lot of big tzaddikim. This is who he chose. So not Elisha ben Avuya cannot be taken lightly. And also, the other thing is that the Gemara elaborates on Elisha ben Avuya. In other words, like it just goes to show you that the Gemara is not some like protecting itself. Like if imagine, God forbid, like one of the Gedolei Ador would go off the derech. Like, it was going to be mefalpil in it so much. The Gemara has at least three blot of Gemara describing Elisha ben Avuya. It's interesting. It's hard to say just because they were fascinated by itself, but they wanted to understand deeply. It helped them, and it helps us understand deeply the way Hashem works. Not Yiddishkeit, not the Torah, but the way Hashem works. So I have a lot to say, but only a few minutes to say it. So I'm going to. The Gemara says at the end of Brachas, before we get to the main Gemara, the Gemara says at the end of Brachas, it talks about dreams, if you have this dream, if you have that dream. I think it's Nun Daled. So the Gemara says that if you dream that you just saw Ben Azai in a dream, if you saw Ben Azai in a dream, maybe tonight you dream, you see Ben Azai in a dream. Like, what does that even, like, but hello, I'm Ben Azai, Shimon Ben Azai. And you see him in a dream. So it says the Gemara that, that's a significant dream. And Yitzpel Chassidus. You could know that there's Chassidus coming your way. In other words, you're seeing a Chassid. Yitzpel Chassidus. It was a tzaddik. The Gemara says that he was otherworldly in his whole life. Aroya ben Zoyma b'chalaim. The Gemara says, let's say you see ben Zoma. So yitzpel chachma. You are going to have a very smart day. Haroya Elisha ben Avuya, or Haroya Acher, I think the Gemara says, b'chalaim. So yitzpel leperonios. Which a simple pshat is, you better go to shul and do a Hatavas Chalom or something. Yitzpel leperonios. You can hope for a bad day. And I want to explain something here that, although I didn't see in the Mefarshim, I think this is the emes pshat in that Gemara. It's out of character because it doesn't say. In other words, Yitzpel Chassidus makes sense. In other words, Yitzpel Chachma, Yitzpel Peronios. You're not seeing what are you seeing? You're seeing the essence of Elisha ben Avuya. When you see Ben Azai, you're seeing Chassidus. When you're seeing Ben Zoymer, you're seeing Chachma. When you're seeing Elisha ben Avuya, what are you seeing? Oisvarf, off the derech guy. What are you seeing? So I think that the pshat in this Gemara is, when you see Elisha ben Avuya, what you're seeing there is not Chachma, what you're seeing there is not Chassidus, what you're seeing is somebody who's worried all the time. Worrying all the time. Meaning, Elisha ben Avuya was a worrier, just like Ben Zoma was a Chacham. And just like Ben Azai was a chassid, he was a worrier. What was he so worried about? He was always worried. So, which is a whole different shot in the Gemara. You chop the nuance here? It's a whole different shot in the Gemara. What was he worried about? What was he worried about? That's what I'm going to explain. So, let me just say one other thing before I say what I want to say. That the Gemara gives a lot of reasons, what happened to him, to Elisha ben Avuya. The Gemara says that in Kedushin, that he saw a kid climbing up a tree to help his father, to do Shiluch HaKan, and he died, got killed and died. Torah says you're going to have Arichas Yom. Is Arichas Yom? He didn't have any Arichas Yomim. The Gemara says that was a reason. Another Gemara says he saw a dog that was during the terrible Roman times, during the real terrible times. He saw it was the time of the Hadrian decrees. He saw a dog walking around with the tongue of chutzpah hamaturgaman. Hamaturgaman means he was the biggest speaker in Klal Yisrael. He was the speaker of the house, and his tongue was his keli, and he was a tzaddik, and he said this can't be. Another Chazal brought by Tosfos, maybe the most famous one, is that it was a story already at his bris. At his bris, the father said, I want my son to have kavod. Just like his father was a big gvir. Maybe he was also a very rich guy. But it didn't last through the Romans because the Gemara says that his daughter was picking a weed out of the dung. So that was his daughter. But his father, everybody came, big rich guy. Everybody came all the big tzaddikim came to the bris, and he saw such kavod. He saw fire coming down from Shemayim, and he said, I want my son to have that kind of kavod. So he said to the bris emotionally. That was apparently a bad move. And it was something that he kept with, meaning like always making sure that his son was comfortable and getting kavod, and it was just brought up the wrong way. In other words, what Tosfos is saying there is that it was simply brought up the wrong way. There's another Gemara that says that when his mother was pregnant, she walked by the Beis Hamikdash and smelled the Ketores. This was still there was still a Beis Hamikdash, right? So that was when his mother was pregnant, like Rabbi Akiva. The Beis Hamikdash was nechrav in the middle of his life. So also Elisha ben Avuya's was born when there were still Ketores. His mother took a deep breath. She was pregnant. She took a deep breath of the Ketores, and she said, "Wow, that's gishmak," and had tremendous hana from it. And she was nana, and that's what happened to Elisha ben Avuya. Others say a more scientific shot that the Ketores is poison. Like, you're not supposed to take that in too much. It's there to give a smell, but the chelbana, maybe things in there are like really not for edible consumption. But maybe that's what happened. But that messed up his mind. Maybe that's what happened to Elisha ben Avuya. But then the Gemara in Chagiga, probably the most famous Gemara, says like something different. It seems like something different completely. Because the Gemara says, this is very well known, the Gemara says, Arba, and this is why it was always word, Arba nichnasu lepardes. So let's go with Tosfos and the Rishonim that learned that this was not some type of seance or some kind of a trip that went to Shemayim or something like that. But Arba nichnasu lepardes means Rabbi Akiva, who was eventually killed by the Romans and was watching the Asar Arugei Malchus and all the terrible starvation and indeed genocide that was taking place to our people. And the big question that shook everybody up is this question of tzaddik v'raloi. That was how could this be? Like, what do we do already that this could be so bad? One could ask that same question coming out of or during the Holocaust, and unfortunately, so many different periods of time. So Rabbi Akiva went on. Apparently, he went on this discovery mission to try to understand and explain tzaddik v'raloi. And on this mission, he took Ben Azai. Interesting, his choice again. Ben Azai, Ben Zoyma, Elisha ben Avuya, and of course himself. So the Gemara reports, Arba nichnasu lepardes eluhain, Ben Azai, Ben Zoyma, ve'acher, and Rabbi Akiva. Amar lam Rabbi Akiva gave guidance before going on this, let's call it a meditative journey. So before going there, where were they going? They were going to the place that we're describing, which is a place above. If you want to understand tzaddik v'raloi, you have to understand tzaddik v'raloi. You have to understand Hashem echad. You must understand this to understand tzaddik v'raloi. So he was giving them guidance in this, like how are we going to go? We don't think about Chazal doing this, but this is what they did. Maybe that's what we should do. Let's have an experience where we're going to go above the 7 spheros and go into a place of echad, Hashem echad, and try to understand a little bit there, or at least experience what is going on right now in the horrible shmad of the Hadrian decrees. Amar lam Rabbi Akiva, so Rabbi Akiva gave guidance, and he said, Kishetikansu etzel avnei shayish tahar, when we get to the stone, the pure marble stones. Now, this is where we are all going to experience this and not understand it. When we get to these pure marble stones in our travel, hizaru, be very careful. Shalai taimru mayim. Sometimes like beautiful marble can look like water. So be careful with that diving board. make sure that there's water in the pool. So when you get there, al taimru hisaru shaloi taimru mayim mayim. Don't say mayim mayim. Mishum d'chsiv doiver shkarim lo yikain leneged einai. There's no makom for sheker. Whatever it is, it is. This is, I mean, in my tiny understanding, what Rabbi Akiva was telling them, whatever it is, it is. Mayim is chesed, Evan is din. Whatever it is, it is. Don't try to, this is what he was telling them, don't try to rationalize it. Don't try to make something that it isn't. So when you come to this brick wall and you hit your head on the wall, Al Taimer Mayim Mayim, because it's not Mayim Mayim, and Dover Shkarim, there's no makom for sheker in the Olam Hayam. That was Rabbi Akiva's guidance. You can take it as you will.
Experience it.
Experience
Don't evaluate it.
That's right. Exactly right. So the Gemara tells us, Ben Azai Heitzitz Vames. Heitzitz means like he peaked. So Ben Azai took a peek, died in this meditation. Apparently, from what my research, Alamakom, he died right there, sitting Rabbi Akiva, and he died. According to many, he was at one point married to Rabbi Akiva's daughter, and that didn't work out. But he died. Ben Azai Heitzitz Vames. Yakar Beinei Hashem Hamavsa Chasidav. So he's a chassid. Ben Zoma also hates it. I presume this means try to understand it a little bit. Das. So hates it, Benifka. He became a Michiganer. Nifka, his brain went. Right there, Allah Bakob. At the table. What's going on? Everything is so important here. You found some honey. Don't try to, which means if you find honey, that's sweet, you're hungry, but if you eat the whole thing, you're gonna get very, very sick. Like a teaspoon is appropriate. So Ben Zoba wanted to go further. And the Gemara later on tells us how he was like Nifka. It was like his mind didn't work correctly for the rest of his life. And Chazal were always missing him, and they would ask him questions, hoping that he would come back, and their response was very meduyak response, Adayin ben Zoyma bachutz. I would have said it means he's out of it, but I think it means something deeper. Acher, what was his response to the whole thing? What happened to him? So the answer is kitzeitz banatiyos. Kitzeitz banatiyos means if there's an apple tree or an orange tree or something, and you kitzeitz banatiyos. I think Rashi says here that you sever the growth from its source. Kitzeitz banatiyos means that you sever whatever's growing from its source. So it still looks good, yeah? For a few hours, a few days, but then it dies. So, acher kitzeitz banatiyos. Let's just, see, you see the same thing, by the way. In other words, like you see that Ben Zoma, if you dream about Ben Zoma, Yitzpelo Chachma, he went at this exercise using Chachma, and it failed him. Ben Azai, if you see Ben Azai in a dream, bringing two Gemaras together, but I think it's connected. If you see Ben Azai in a dream, you see Chassidus, and he went at this with fervor, with kavanah, but he died. You have to be grounded. In other words, what does died mean? Died means that, right, your goof is not serving its purpose. That's what died means. Like the Indian Amisa is interesting. Like what happens, but dying is dying. It's not, just like passing, if you will. So your neshama is going to a different place. But Azai can no longer be what he was in the goof that gave him all these limitations. So It says, Yakar b'einei Hashem amavsel chasidav. It's interesting, like what Hashem loves when people die. So first of all, the Mepharshim say Yakar means it's difficult for Hashem. Yakar b'einei Hashem amavsel chasidav. Yakar means it's expensive, it's hard, it's difficult, and not necessarily cherished. But even if you'll say that it's cherished, the pshat is, look, for Ben Azai, he went on to a world where he's more comfortable. So, but what did Acher do? Kitzeitz banatiyos. So the Gemara explains. You don't need my drushes here. The Gemara explains, and so a wild Gemara. The Gemara says that as Elisha ben Avuya was involved in this exercise of trying to understand Tzaddik V'Raloi, the Gemara tells us that he encountered a malach. In other words, he was busy with he was busy with the workers. So he encountered, and not just any malach, but chief malach metatron, which is, I believe, a Greek word, but that's the word that they use, metatron. If you look in the Ramban in Shmos, he describes this very, very importantly, where he describes, I believe, is where he describes the difference between Hashem saying that I'll take you out of Mitzrayim, or we'll get it done for you. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Imein panecha olchim al taleinu mizeh." No, we don't want any metatrons. The Ramban says we don't want any metatrons. But it's there. It's the CEO in Shemaim's metatron. He encountered the metatron, and metatron was doing zeros, bad things, and he said, "Okay, da likt der Hund bagruben." This is where the problems are. The problems are with metatron. What about Hashem? What about Hashem? And he got stuck on this metatron, and as the Gemara says, he began to believe in Shtei Reshuyos. Shtei Reshuyos is dualism. It's been going on since the beginning of the world. The Christians prefer it in triplicate. But it's all the same thing. It's not Hashem echad u'shmo echad as far as we're concerned, that there is no other power than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is no other force. There is no other decider. So what's this metatron doing there? So here's what he did. He was kitzeitz benatios. This is what it means. He cut off what's going on in this world from its actual source, which is Hashem. Now, once you do that, let's say chas v'shalom, any of us would do that, you need to be doeg min haperonios. Your whole metzius will be to worry. Am I right? Your whole metzius will be, oh no, what's going to happen next, and what is the devil going to make me do? And once you start with all of these kind of like dark places and forces in the bria that are not Hashem, once you go away from the enod milvado, doeg min haperonios, you don't understand any longer. How could it be that this kid climbed a tree to do kibbud av and shiluach hakan, and he fell down and he died? Became design. Well, unless you have a munah and Hashem echad u'shmo echad, there is no understanding of it. And once you say, "Oh, Metatron did that," like this, so now you're a dualist. And once you the reason why there's this let's call it avodah zarah of dualism in the world since so long ago is because nobody was able to deal with good and evil. It's as simple as that. It can't be that a God did the Holocaust and also a state of Israel and we're having children and like how could it be? The answer is we know the answer. The answer is Hashem echad u'shmo echad, but that's a hard answer. The easy answer is, okay, there must be a koyach hatoiv, koyach hara. They all put it in different languages. There's all kinds of languages and all kinds of actual religions ad hayom hazeh, which are trying to appease the evil. But you'll hear it on many circles. The devil made me do it. It's the devil's not making anybody do anything we understand. Everything's Mussar and Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov. The Gadol Hador, Elisha ben Avuya, fell into this trap. That's how big of a trap it was at the time. So who's judging him? I'll tell you one person who didn't judge him was Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir continued to learn from him. And he says, okay, he's got this he's got this problem, but he's still apparently he has something on the ball here. Reb Meir swear to the fact that he did Teshuvah, and in Shemayim his neshama is fine. But as Reb Tzadok says, Rabbi Meir was the Gadol Ador, was also Takanas Hashavin. He also, what he taught in his yeshiva, the Gadol Ador, he taught that listen, don't be so quick to, you could be Matayar Sheretz even. Let me show you. Even one of them came up with 100-something ways to be Matayar the Sheretz. One of his Talmidim. This was the school of Rabbi Meir. Here, in this case, the Sheretz was Elisha ben Avuya, where you can find something redeeming in him. So I got to believe there's something so deep to the fact that, and then we'll wind around to what we're saying here. There's so much to say, but the Gemara tells a story that Yerushalmi embellishes it, that Elisha ben Avuya haya roichev ala sus. He went horseback riding. Yerushalmi adds on Yom Kippur, not Shabbos, on Yom Kippur shechal yos b'Shabbos, that the Gemara says, keneged kodesh hakadoshim. He went to the Kaisel, Harabayas. Let's check it out. There was already a Charbon. And he's riding from, where he lived, Elisha ben Avuya lived in the Galil, in Tveria. So that's quite a ride by horse. And he's riding, Kfish Tishim, and he's riding to Yerushalayim. And he gets to Yerushalayim because Rabbi Meir at that time lived in Yerushalayim. So he's riding on Yom Kippur. You can't even tell the story without saying, one of the most brilliant insights of Rav Soloveitchik, Olav Shalom, that said he had no place to go horseback riding except for the Harabayas. Go Golan, the country's open to you. Like if you want to go horseback riding on Yom Kippur, it's like bicycles. You don't have to go to the Kaisel. Like that's where you go. Like you go to the Harabayas. Rav Soloveitchik so brilliantly said, well, the answer to that is because his neshama was pulling him to the Harabayas. But in any case, the Gemara says that Rabbi Meir saw him and was running after him. Teach me Torah, teach me Torah. And Elisha ben Avuya was getting annoyed by him and said, I was measuring be'ikvei asus. I measured by the boom, 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 by the horse step, the trotting of the horses. Shavarnu tchum Shabbos. You're not allowed to be going here anymore. Go ask your Rabbi Akiva, he said. You're not supposed to be going out of the tchum Shabbos. I mean, the genius that wasn't looking at distance, he was counting the trotting of the horse. Like, who does that? But he said, Avarta tchum Shabbos. And Reb Meir stopped, because tchum Shabbos, and he said to him, why don't you do Teshuvah? Why don't you do Teshuvah? You have so much to teach. Why don't you do Teshuvah? His Talmud. And what was his answer? And this gets us right to where we are. Shamati me'achorei hapargud shekulam l'teshuvah chutz me'acher. Now, I just want to point out to you, this could be your homework, that in one place it says, Shamati baskol shuvavanim shoivavim kulam l'teshuvah chutz me'acher. Here he doesn't say Shamati baskol. Here he says Shamati me'achorei hapargud. It's curious to me why Acharei Pargud, is that the same thing as a Baskal? Acharei Pargud means like I already heard from beyond. Kulam l'tshuva chutz me'acher. So it's interesting. Some say that this was when he got to the Harabayas. That is the Pargud. And I already heard there that you're not accepted in the tshuva department here. Like go do your tshuva. In any case, I guess let's just say this in closing. There's so much to say here, and maybe we'll talk about it more. By the way, look at advertisement. I was going to I wrote a sefer called Levavos. I don't know if you have it or not. So in Parak Daled, I don't even know if there are any for sale, but you're welcome to buy. But in Parak Daled, so like I wrote an essay about this, about Elisha ben Avuya, and it's worth, if I may say so myself, it's worth buying the book and because it's pretty good. But here's the story for us. That here's the Baskol, here's the Acharei Pargud, and they're all saying Acher, which is he was named by a Zona, Acher. But it's such aren't you Elisha ben Avuya? So he said, he pulled out he did some Chil Shabbos, and aren't you Elisha ben Avuya? Oh, you must be Acher. The name stuck. Because Acher is that you're not Elisha ben Avuya right now. That's what it means. You're not Elisha ben Avuya right now. You're acting like a Meshugana. You are being Kotzeitz ben Atios. But this is not the real you. The Zona called it. And it's stuck. It's stuck in the Adayom Hazeh. You're Acher. He heard a Baskol, says Reb Tzadok. He heard Me'achor Pargud, and he knew that he cannot do Teshuvah. So once he knew that he can't do Teshuvah, in the words of the Gemara, just drop everything. He was a Doeg Leperonius because he could not make peace with the oneness of Hashem because of his Metatron experience. So he didn't see any purpose in keeping Torah and mitzvahs. Nothing is connected to Hashem anyways. In that way, he believed in Shtei Rishuyos. And it's so significant when the Mishnah tells us, watch out for those guys that say modim, or they're like always trying to satisfy the dark side. This is not Judaism. But he fell in, and he heard a baskol within. A baskol is an echo, like a baskol. He heard within the seven spheros. He heard that he can't do tshuva. Acharei Pargud. He got so far as Acharei Pargud. I can't do tshuva. What he didn't do, and this is what Reb Tzadok tells us here in one sentence. What he didn't do is get above all that and know that even if there's a baskol, and even if there's a glass ceiling, a pargud, which says you can't go any further, but everybody can do tshuva. And that was really what Rabbi Meir was saying. How can you do tshuva if you can't do tshuva? That's the answer. That the way you can do tshuva is by getting, you can climb right over that glass ceiling. It's a difficult thing to do, but you can do it. It's possible to do, and this is the yisoid of Reb Tzadok in Siman Gimel over here, that something like the Meiser Merkava, yeah, it's like something like you can experience something even if you can't do something. You can go higher than what physics, teva, and even the physics of the Bria, the seven spheros. I don't know what the spiritual word is for physics. You know what I mean? I don't know how you say the physics means physical, but the seven spheros is like physics. But you can get out of all that and defy it. But that's already an experience. But that's an experience that everybody can do. So that even Menashe HaMelech could do. That's what it means that Hashem let him in from a different space. That's exactly what that means. He yes, all the malachim and all the spheros and everything, you can't do it. But you can do it here. It's look, I just want to say this, that we're saying slichus this week, but we have to talk about this. But Baruch Hashem, none of us are Ovdei Avodah Zarah or doing any big Averos, Baruch Hashem, like we're all, like this is, I have the privilege of talking to tzaddikim. But still, Still, there's it's a Zman of Teshuvah. So, it's still a time to be able to kind of like crawl out of the regular place and the regular physics and not be doeg leperanius. Doeg leperanius is when you snip. So, but if we cannot, like, that's a bad sign. Doeg leperanius is a bad sign if you're always worried about the other shoe is going to fall, because that takes Hashem out of the picture. So it's a time of emunah. It's a time of emunah, and maybe even emunah pshuta to climb into that place. Chazal tell us when you hear the shofar, you can do that. It's part of the hearing the shofar. Okay. Good benched, Yara.